Welcome everybody. This is Executing Notebooks Everywhere, and hopefully we can start with the sponsors. Without them we wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be here. So thank you for the sponsors. And it all starts with a script. I wrote a script, probably you wrote a script, you were happy, you gave it to someone, and it didn't run on their machine, right? And you were clueless why. Well, before we go into that, I'm David Sass. I'm a security engineer at Switch. I have lots of things listed about me, not going to bother reading them. The main thing is that I have a complicated relationship with Git, and I will talk about notebooks all week if you ask me. So yes, the situation, we have something written, we are good, happy, give it to someone, and we realize, oh, it doesn't work, right? You have been there? Cool. Who used notebooks before? I mean, Jupyter notebooks in PowerShell. 4, 5, 7, 8, okay, some of you. You should not ask me questions. Okay, so the situation is you have something, it works on your machine, but that can depend on many things. You can have a profile with custom settings in it, which alter your scripting behavior. You can have modules pre-installed, which might be missing somewhere else. You might have the right version of the module, someone might not, etc. It all gives you to this, it works for you, it doesn't work for anyone else. Now, the proposal would be to solve this situation is to use PowerShell notebooks. It should work everywhere. I haven't tested everywhere, but in theory, it should run even in pipelines in the cloud or on-prem. For those who don't know what PowerShell notebooks are and everyone else, notebooks were made for data science stuff where they work with data, analyze it, and they want to ship it together, the data and the scripts, tools for other people so they can analyze it elsewhere on other machines. So it's used in research, education, data science, lots of places. And Microsoft implementation originally was called Interactive Notebooks. They renamed it to Polyglot Notebooks. Don't ask me why, they just rename stuff. And they have a blog post explain it. My general intention was if researchers use it, it should be good, so maybe we should use it as well. And luckily, Doug Finke, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, made an awesome module which helps us. So we can use notebooks not only in a VS Code editor, but inside a simple command line as well. And I will go into the details, but I stole this nice animation from the blog post showing that when you have a notebook, you have the code, and you can just basically push the play button and see the results. And that's it. And it's awesome. I'm hoping it will be awesome doing my demos this way. No copy pasting or anything else. So why notebooks, right? I think they are like containers. They are self-contained solutions, and I will show to you why I mean that. Mostly because they do not use your profile. They come with their own profile, which is by default empty. And I would never recommend anyone to edit those. If you have customizations, put it into the notebook so it's visible. And when you ship it, you ship your customization together with your notebook. If you start editing a profile file, that will be tied to your machine and will not ship with your notebook. So don't do that. As I mentioned, they run everywhere, as long as you have the prerequisites, which is that PowerShell Notebooks module from Doug. And I really love them because I don't want to remember what I wrote and what that script did in the past. So I can rely on the notebook being my own digital memory. And I can go back later, months, years, after 3 different projects and see everything which I did and remember that way. And of course, documentations are built in, which some people don't like. I like it because I don't like people asking me questions what the code does, and that way they can leave me alone. You basically just need some extensions to work with it, and sharing is caring. You can give your notebook to a new people joining your team, and hopefully they will get everything from it without asking you questions or me. So let's start with a demo, and hopefully this will work. Yes, okay. I prepared some notebooks and showing you the part that I have. We can have either code or markdown in it. And the first is a markdown. You can see it in this corner. And I can switch between edit mode and view mode. Yes. And whoever comes here will see it and can read this as a documentation. What you need to know is that every notebook comes with its own process. So the process ID will be unique between notebooks. And if you have process-dependent stuff, it will not work across notebooks, and you need to do something else. But try to not do cross-notebook work, because that's just going to be messy. The notebooks know about where they are, and as you can see, I'm just pushing this execute cell button and I see the results. What's good here is that we can see that this is an unsaved notebook. If I save it, close it, and go back and open again, all that stuff will be there. We see the process ID being 2700. If I run it again, it's still the same. So as long as I don't restart VS Code, that process which was created for this notebook will still be there, which is good because you don't lose your information or session. Now, there are some freaky stuff here. If you check the PS home, it's going to be something super weird hidden in your user profile in a NuGet package somewhere. And that's not the best place to do work in. So try not to use the PS home variable for anything. Now, is there a profile? There is not by default. Could be, yes. Don't do it. That's a recommendation. If you look into a bit more, it's a bit different than an interactive profile. It only has 2 properties: all users current host and current user current host. So there is no profile from the system32 folder, like all process, all users. Yes. And if we check the locations, one of them will be that PS home folder, and the other one will be your personal documents folder with the .NET Interactive extension or words in the profile name. Again, do not edit this file. Now, what is good with these snippets you can have is that whatever variable you create, it will be available between all of them. As you can see, I'm making sure that I do not have a notebook scoped variable because I'm removing it and I'm trying to get it, and I have the error message, so it's not there. And if I try to put something in it, sometimes it errors out. I think it's buggy on my machine, but I can give it a value, and later when I check, the value is there. So you can populate, you can have these nice flow of your notebook, that you start with your prerequisite variables, things like that, and then you move forward and you have another block for something else, and all of that shares the same session. I don't think that they are called notebook scoped variables, but that's what I'm calling them. And we have all the rest of the variables, lots of stuff. And I'm showing it to you, so you will see that there are these 3 dots here because the output is truncated. It will not show you thousands of or millions of lines when that's the output. You can enable a scrollable element here, or you can say open it in a text editor, which will open another tab, and you will see everything in it. Useful sometimes. So this is the absolute basics, and I'm going back to my presentation. Yes. So what you need to use all of these things, if you want to edit them, probably VS Code is the best place to start. You need PowerShell 7 Plus. You need the Jupyter extension pack from Microsoft for VS Code. It will install 4 other Jupyter-related extensions. These are basically the 3rd most downloaded extensions on the VS Code marketplace. So if you have problems with it, probably you will find your solution with 1 or 2 searches on the internet because it's so popular. As I mentioned, if you want to use PowerShell, you need the Polyglot Notebooks extension. It requires the Jupyter extension as a prerequisite. Or you can alternatively use dev containers. You can use all of these in a dev container inside GitHub. And I will show that real quick. So I have a repository I'm using for testing. I have a dev container configuration here. Some stuff in it, like I want the PowerShell being installed to the container. I want the Azure CLI to be installed. And for the VS Code extension, I want the PowerShell extension and the .NET Interactive extension, which is the Polyglot extension. Display name and ID is different because Microsoft renamed it. So as usual, it's confusing. And if I go back to my home repo, I can click code spaces, and this will be in the links. You can basically copy that configuration and it will build your container with that configuration, and you can edit away in your browser. No need to install anything on your machine, and this is useful when you work with other people. They can come there and use the same thing without installing anything. And it's loaded, and I will execute the same stuff. When it starts, it detects your kernel. That's something I don't understand. I don't think I need to understand. So, but there are different kernels, this .NET Interactive and the Python one, and that's not for me. And I have the same stuff. It remembers that the last time this was edited and saved, I had this process ID. If I run it, it's a different one because this is a new session and I have a new process ID. Of course, because now this is a code space, every change is going to modify the file, and you have the decision, do you want to save it back and save all your results or your output into your repository or not. So if that's not something you need, you can just close it and no need to bother with it anymore. And when it comes to using interactively. As I mentioned, there is this PowerShell Notebook module from Doug. You install it, and basically your best friend will be invoke PowerShell Notebook, the commandlet. You give it your notebook file path, and it will execute it. You will see all the code output on your screen, and it works. And one of the use cases could be that maybe you have an onboarding workflow based on PowerShell to create users, set up groups, etc., etc. You can put that in a notebook. Maybe in the front you have the variables initialization or some configuration in a JSON or CSV format with the employee name, groups, etc. You can run it. You can save it as a new file with all the output, and then you have an audit trail that, yes, you did. All of that stuff was created, and you can save that file somewhere if you need to show that, yes, that process, that person was onboarded or offboarded, and your notebook will be your audit history. And if there is any question, you can come back and see, yes, I run it. There was no problem, or there was problem. And it's awesome. And I will show it to you in my second demo or third. So basically, I have the folder with the same files. I don't have the module loaded. I can, just for sake of loading. And I know the problem, so I managed to start the Windows PowerShell, not PowerShell 7, and that's why I'm having issues. And yes, that happens a lot. Okay, so I can import the module, it works, and I can invoke it, and ideally we should see all of that output, maybe in a different format. Let's scroll up. So we have the process ID, we have those passes shown. I mean, this is the current folder and the PS home folder where PowerShell is running. And I have a profile because this is not the notebook in VS Code. This is the notebook's code executed in an interactive terminal. So here, your profile will mess things up. So this is good for quick experimenting, maybe. I wouldn't do this day to day because here my profile will do weird stuff, and that's only good for myself. And as you can see, we have 4 profile properties because this is not a notebook session, but an interactive session. And that's why it's different. And of course, the variable stuff will just work because it's in a single context. And the difference in formatting is that when I get the content of the variables drive, this one gives it in a list format. When we were looking at the notebook, it was giving it in a table format. So that's why it looks different. Okay, now I mentioned that this can run everywhere, and everywhere means in pipelines as well. And for that, I'm heading over to GitHub and closing that code space because I don't need that, and showing you that I made 2 workflow files. One is called blank, and it has pure CLI in it. You can see it, right? Okay. I'm going to edit it because that way it looks better. So, standard GitHub action stuff, name, when it is executed, and it has some permissions because this one will execute the Azure CLI. I'm authenticating against Azure, and I'm getting some information from my Azure subscription, and I will show you how I set that up and reference some sessions you should attend to get to the details. And there is a job, and there are some steps. I'm using Justin's module fast step to install the PowerShell Notebook module from the store. It's not shipped. This module is not part of my repository. So in this pipeline, it's installed every time the action is executed. And after that, I sign in into Azure CLI using some secrets from the GitHub repository. And this is using the OpenID connect method. So there are no secrets stored anywhere. And that's, I believe, the best approach, because then you don't have to rotate them. And you can say that you want to enable the Azure PowerShell session as well. So you can use both Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI in your notebook, which is beneficial, I believe. And I'm going to run some CLI commands in PowerShell just to show that, yes, I'm connected, and get some resource groups from my subscription. And then I will execute a notebook. And this one is actually not the right one. I need to check. Because I wanted to show you how to make changes, so you can just specify your notebook path, save your file, and it will trigger the pipeline or the action. And that's going to be our pure CI pipeline. It takes a bit of time. That I have another one prepared. I will go there next. We are signing in. Installing those modules. Module fast supposed to be much faster than doing install module, because it uses some custom stuff just made for pipelines and actions, because you don't want to spend time and compute money and resources on waiting for the modules to be installed. So this is doing some optimization, parallel downloads and things like that to speed up and make your pipelines run for a shorter time and costs less money. So we signed in. Oh, going up, way up. Installed the prerequisites. It shows the module and stuff. There is the CLI login. It shows that I have a subscription. I'm connected with a service principal. That means OICD connect. And it executed the AZ group list command, and these are my resource groups. So it works. And there was just one thing I will need to solve later, that for some reason the AZ executable was available on the lowest level of the container of the GitHub action. But when I tried to use it inside my notebook, it was giving me an error of AZ command not found. And I had to tweak it to make it available. And I am going to show that here that I had to put an alias to that pass to make it work inside the notebook. And this is the notebook's execution. The notebook has the show account. It shows the account, the same thing we saw higher up, and the same query for the resource group. So it will inherit your context and you can do all your stuff. You don't need to have connection information inside your notebook as long as you connect with the GitHub action before. All of that is available for you, so you have a cleaner code and you don't expose any connection information to people when you share this, because all of that is stored as secrets, and those secrets are hidden away, not there. As repository secrets. And configuring this is easy. Follow the docs, and both Emmanuel and Ben will talk about this today and tomorrow. Okay, so this is when you do the heavy lifting, and there is another action here which is called Notebook CI, and this is using a PowerShell Notebook action I made last week. Basically, I did the heavy lifting, so it will get you the required prerequisites, the Notebook PowerShell module and everything, and your only job is to say, this file is what you want to execute, and that's it. Of course, you still need to sign in as a different step into Azure if you are doing stuff against Azure, but all of the rest is handled by this action. And if you want to know how to make actions like this, Justin will have a session about them. Basically, it's a composite action, super easy stuff. And I execute those commands here, calling I have a file notebook runner, and that's going to execute your input file. And I have some modules preloaded, so these things are available for you, and you don't have to bother. If you need more and you are around here, submit an issue or a pull request, and we can have more modules prepackaged with the GitHub action, and I will make sure that these are updated. But if you need specific versions, probably you need the bare metal approach, where you do your heavy lifting and use the module fast installer from Justin, because that way you can specify what you need to the right version. And I have basically the same stuff. I have a login. I run some CLI commands outside, same commands against same subscription, and then I can execute my notebook and will save the same information in the same format. And the workflow file is here. And basically, yes, this is much cleaner because I'm just passing over the test file path. The same test file works the same way. I haven't actually checked which one is faster in execution. I'm not sure I can see it. Oh, I can. So the pure approach is more than a minute. The GitHub action approach is half a minute. So you can save time, probably because there was no installation, module installation required. And this should work in GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps. I haven't went there to test, But in theory, it's the same approach. Because this is a Linux container, and we see that in Linux you can use the notebook, so it should run everywhere, even on macOS. But I'm staying away from that. Okay, some references for you. The PowerShell Notebook package or module on PowerShell Gallery, the PowerShell Notebook actions on the GitHub Marketplace, the PowerShell Notebook tester repository I used for this demo, and the series sessions you should attend, or if you can, or watch the recordings later about authenticating to Azure without secrets or writing custom GitHub actions, because they are fun. And with that, maybe you need time for the questions. Yes. So the question is about PowerShell 5.1. No, because the interactive notebook framework requires PowerShell 7. I think it worked with 6 as well, but that's not supported anymore. So sadly, no PowerShell 5 for us. Unless your notebook calls the PowerShell exe and do stuff with it, but that's ugly. Thanks. Any more questions? No. Awesome. Will you use it?
Depends, because I just PowerShell 7 a lot, also for work reasons. But you still have some ties back to 5.1, some modules not being supported, and some use cases eventually. So
Yeah.
it's quite in mind to have like 2 frameworks to maintain, in my opinion.
Thank you. So if you still need to use PowerShell 5, sadly, this is not for you. If you can move away, I hope you can. Consider using this because it's just much easier, cleaner, doing a demo, shipping, everything. And you had another question?
Yeah, it depends on how easy it is for me to share it with the colleagues that are not that tech savvy. But it seems like dev containers might be the answer there.
Yes, if you need to share with less technical people and you can use dev containers, that's just, you give them a link, say click here, and it will load with the right pre-configuration for your dev container, and the same goes if they have dev container running on their machine. VS Code will ask them, but probably they are not that technical. Thanks.
Are you able to use your credentials for that container?
So if you...
I've never had my colleague's own credentials. Will his access be available through that container? He has access to some resources. That is what we do.
Okay, so if I got the question right, would the executing user's credential be available for a dev container? If it's in the browser on GitHub, no, because it's running with a local user inside the container. If you are running on your machine, probably also no, because it's also a container. So the container will be your security boundary, and you need to do some lifting to make credentials available. But also if you are in a container and you want to sign in to Azure with your credentials, not OpenID Connect, you should use the device code approach, because the container probably won't open you an interactive browser window to sign in with MFA, but you can do that with the device code and sign in that way. But that's for one-time execution. The next time you need to sign in again, it won't remember. Good question. Anyone else? Going 1, going 2, going 3. Okay, thank you.